The League of Women Voters is a national nonpartisan organization formed to encourage citizen participation in government. It never supports or opposes any political party or candidate. The statements and opinions of the candidates are presented solely in the interest of public service and in no way are to be construed as an endorsement thereof by the League of Women Voters. The League of Women Voters takes no responsibility for the views or facts stated by the candidates. The audio or video from the forum may not be used in or for commercial advertising. This presentation is copyrighted by the League of Women Voters. All rights are reserved. This video may only be shown in its entirety.
Good evening, everybody. I'm now going to take my glasses off because I have a choice of seeing you or the script, and it's, unfortunately, it's got to be the script. So, good evening, candidates and audience, and welcome to this forum for the City of Rochester Hills election for mayor and for council member from the 2nd District. I am Carla Barrows-Wiggins, a member of the League of Women Voters, Oakland Area. I am not a resident of Rochester Hills. The League of Women Voters, a nonpartisan political organization, encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. It is the League's intention that following this forum, you'll be informed and able to cast a responsible vote. Tonight, we will be introducing the candidates seeking election to the position of mayor. This is a 4-year term with an annual salary in fiscal year 2024 of $146,908 to $170,308. We will also present the candidates for the position of council member for District 2. This position is a 4-year term with an annual salary in fiscal year 2024 of $6,940. Views expressed at this forum are those of the candidates. The League does not take responsibility for these views. The format for this program has been established by the League, and the candidates have signed a pledge to abide by the ground rules. We ask that the audience remain silent during the forum and turn off all cell phones. Following the opening statements, candidates will respond to questions from members of our audience. Questions can be directed to any or all candidates. Please keep the questions short. Each candidate will have the opportunity to respond to any of the questions. Responses to questions will not be strictly timed, but candidates have been asked to limit their answers to 2 minutes or less. Follow-up and rebuttal to questions will be allowed, but will be limited to 30 seconds. The order of who responds first will rotate. Questions and responses may only address issues that pertain to the position of the office the candidate is seeking. We ask you to please hold all applause until the conclusion of this program. We will now begin the opening statements, which are limited to 1 minute. And I believe we're starting with Brian Barnett over on the far left.
Well, thank you. For 17 years, I've had the privilege of serving as your mayor. And over that time, we've won nearly every governmental award available and gained a reputation as one of the most efficiently managed communities in the entire country. We take pride in being Michigan's safest city, maintaining one of the county's lowest tax rates, and continually investing in your streets, parks, and green spaces. I'm so proud of our team, the unprecedented level of customer service we provide, and the first-class experience we've created for our community. And I'm grateful that our residents have continued to place their trust in me to lead. That trust is something I don't take lightly. I love this city. It's where I went to college, it's where we raised our children, it's where I have the privilege of serving every day. Tonight I hope to draw a clear distinction between an experienced national leader who has delivered unparalleled local results and one who has not. I look forward to discussing my track record of innovation and excellence, along with my unwavering commitment to maintaining Rochester Hills as a preeminent place to live, work, and raise your family. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we will hear from the other candidate for mayor, Ariane Paviani.
Yes. Thank you. Because these things will change. Can you feel it now? The words of singer-songwriter Taylor Swift ring true. It's time for change, a time for passing of the baton, and a time for a new generation of leadership to take over. It's time for new ideas that can take us even further, and it's time to fully address the things that have stood in our way. The residents of Rochester Hills want change, while keeping the character of the city that they love, which include green spaces, landmarks, and natural and historic features that are the community points of pride. They want progress and development that adds to the community and enhances the community, but does not take away from the character of the city. They want change. My name is Ariane Paviani. I'm running to be your mayor, and I am part of a new generation of leadership that not only wants this change, but is committed to delivering change in a positive and smart way that our residents are asking for. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll hear from the first candidate for council member from the 2nd District, Nicholas A. Sahu.
Good evening, and thank you. My name is Nicholas Sahu, and I'm a lifelong resident of this city, Rochester Hills. I'm a product of this community from pre-K all the way to graduating from Oakland University with the Bachelor's of Science in Public Administration and Public Policy. I've worked previously as a policy analyst at Detroit City Council and currently work in public sector tech procurement. The reason I'm running for City Council is the same reason I elected to stay in Rochester Hills after I graduated. I love my hometown, and I'm passionate about the community that we have here. However, in the time that I've been civically active, I've mostly involved myself in knocking doors, and I've heard increasing concerns from residents regarding issues of green spaces and development. I want to make sure that future generations of families, including my own, will be able to enjoy what others I had growing up here in Rochester Hills. It's my belief that in order to do this, we must protect green spaces in Rochester Hills and push sustainable quality developments, as we know that our community does deserve. I look forward to answering any questions and would be humbled to have your support come November 7th.
Thank you. And now for the second candidate for City Council, 2nd District, David J. Blair.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. When I became a Rochester Hills homeowner 15 years ago, I didn't really truly appreciate what it meant, the catchphrase, the best place to live, work, and raise your family. This community is special. We've got the business owners on Main Street, we've got our Brooklands district, we've got our fantastic parts system, Maggie and the Chamber, Pat McKay and the museum, the Masonic Lodge, the Rotary Club, Leader Dogs. This is an honest-to-God great community, and I love living here. And that's what prompted me to run for City Council 4 years ago. When I say live, work, and raise your family, I've done all 3 of those. My twins, Ben and Abby, attend Brewster Elementary. They're 10 years old. I live on Sandy Ridge Drive in the Chichester subdivision, just north of Tinkin. And I started my IT business at 919 University, just walking distance from my house. And I know what that means and how important it is to every voter in Rochester Hills. And I can promise you, we're going to keep a great thing going. And I look forward to seeing how this evening unfolds. Thank you so much.
Thank you, candidates. We'll now take questions from the audience. Chris Wiggins, another League of Women Voters member, will be circulating through the audience. Please raise your hand if you have a question.
Start over here.
Yes, he's not allowed to give up the microphone, sorry.
We won't give it. You know that. Well, my name is Sarah Redmond, and I'm a resident of Rochester Hills. First, I want to thank you for serving our communities, either in your current position or aspiring to that position. My question is directed primarily to current Rochester Hills mayor and council persons, but also to those running for those positions. We live in times when Mother Nature is fighting back, and we must learn to adjust, adapt, or perish. Climate change is not an issue to debate. That is settled. What wasn't settled is what we in the local communities will do to make meaningful changes. By taking action now, we can protect our health, reduce our cost of operation, attract businesses and residents. But stagnating with business as usual, we will be left behind, and our families, including my 6 grandchildren, will pay the price. So my question is, What is the city doing or planning to prepare for our ever-increasingly hostile environment?
Given that this was directed at all candidates, though primarily the current mayor, we're rotating through the candidates to be first for answering each question. We will start this one with Ariane Paviani.
Okay. So my plan to fight climate change is to protect our development. The stronger, more condensed development we have will actually raise the temperature of the city itself. So that is one way that we can take an initiative to fight it within our city, is not overdevelop. Also, we need more bike paths. Bike paths will get people out on the bike. Using bikes to go to work will take cars off the streets. That will help the climate change and emissions issues that we have. So those are two of the easy ways that I see that we could protect our city from climate change itself.
Thank you. Then we'll move on to Nicholas Sahu.
Thank you. Sir, I think that's an excellent question, and something where Michigan will be facing very unique challenges when it comes to climate change. Two ways on the municipal level that I would like to see climate change handled from a government point of view would be, first of all, incorporating green energy where we can in public buildings, say that's solar panels or wind-powered turbines. Another thing I want to see, and something I feel has been lagging behind, is building up more momentum for electric vehicle chargers. I know that this issue was talked about in 2021, but I really have not seen much of it since then, and I think that we should make that a much higher priority.
Thank you. Then now from David Blair.
Thank you. I'm not going to speak about things that I'd like to see done. I'm going to tell you about the things that are happening right now to address these important issues. Anyone who watched the city council meeting this week knows that history was made in this city. We are receiving record-breaking money from the state of Michigan to clean up contaminated sites in the city of Rochester Hills. Parts of this community were an illegal dumping ground for decades, and this land is toxic and it can't be developed. And there was no way for developers to afford the cleanup until this windfall from the state. And it's been thanks to our elected officials in Lansing that we're able to get these monies. Second, we're acquiring new properties to protect in this city from development. We just took acquisition of protected space with Main Street frontage, Rochester Road, forever protected from development, and we're planning pathways to interconnect. We're energy efficient at all of our facilities. We've undertaken a massive initiative for LED lighting and energy efficiency audits in the city of Rochester Hills. We're #1 in the state of Michigan for recycling. Our Recycle Bank program brings back tens of thousands of dollars every year for our school district, and we just renewed our GFL contract for waste hauling, and there's a plan to bring recycling into the parks here in Rochester Hills. These are happening right now, and these are things that I voted to approve, and we're not done yet taking care of the environment in Rochester Hills.
Thank you. And now for Brian K. Barnett.
Yeah, thank you. Councilman Blair is exactly right, and Mr. Edmond, thank you for your question. It's a good one, and it's one, again, I think my job tonight is hopefully to show you the difference between results and platitudes. As Councilman Blair mentioned, we have an incredible track record of being Michigan's environmental leader. It starts with what we do out at the end of your street. We're the first community to introduce rewards for recycling, and that program has revolutionized recycling to make our city the #1 recycling community in Michigan. I brought that program here 10 years ago. No one between New Jersey and Arizona was doing it. We went from being in the bottom quartile in our county to being the #1 in the state. And that program has put $150,000 into the school district for green programs. It's a wonderful cycle of teaching the next generation about the importance of being green. It's also how we recreate. In Innovation Hills, that's a show place for green innovation. We have green roofs on several of our buildings. We have no mow zones. We have wildflowers planted where otherwise you'd see green grass. We use that as a show place. I tour folks all the time there, showing them what you can do to recreate in an environmentally responsible way. We have, as Mr. Blair mentioned, done all the efficiencies you can do in the building, but it's more about leading with our values. We want people to see that we don't just talk the talk here, we walk the walk. And for those efforts, and for my leadership in those efforts, and a few years ago, I was inducted into the Michigan Green Hall of Fame, and I'm exceptionally proud of that.
Thank you. We will now take a second question.
Hi. My question initially is for Brian. My name is Bruce Felk. I've lived in Rochester Hills for, I think, 45 years. And I just want to bring back to you an incident that happened, and hopefully you'll have a good response for me. We were at the OPC, and I asked you why Rochester Hills doesn't have a public pool. We also don't have a public community center like Troy. We don't have any dog parks. And when I asked you why we don't have a public pool, your answer was, well, I have a membership at Lifetime Membership. In other words, I have mine, you get yours. Is that how you intend to govern going forward?
This question, I believe, was directed at every...
Well, it's good to get Mr. Falk's question out of the way soon and early. Mr. Falk, it's good to see you, as always. I highly doubt that that was my response to you. That is not I don't have a membership to Lifetime Fitness, so that is inaccurate. But the...
Excuse me, this is not a back and forth.
No. I'm perfectly fine answering Mr. Falk's question. No, the root of his question is about community assets, about what the community wants and what the community desires to pay for. And when you talk about whether it be a community pool or a dog park, the thing that I always go back to is not what I want or even what the council wants. You have to go back to the residents. We ask our residents every single year, actually every other year, in a statistically significant survey, what are the assets and the amenities that they desire to see in this community? Because we should follow our lead from them. And in the last 17 years as mayor, that's how we've done it. We've asked our residents first what they need. They've said they wanted a dog park. You'll be happy to know, Mr. Falk, in this budget, we've added money for a dog park. A dog park is coming to Rochester Hills. Dogs everywhere are barking. I know, I can hear them. This is how you lead a community, is you lead by listening, and that's always what we've done. We have, also in the budget next year, a study of Spencer Park. Now, Spencer Park is where we have our lake, and we're talking about adding aquatic elements to our lake. 2 years ago, we added the city's first splash pad. It's been a tremendous success. We do these because we listen to our residents, find out what their needs are first, and then find out the right way to support them and the right place in the community for them. We just did a survey, and 94% of you in this audience, if you're a Rochester Hills resident, 94% of you are happy with the direction of the city. It means we're listening to your needs, and hopefully we're performing on the other side. I'm really proud of that statistic, and those good things are coming. Thank you for your question, Mr. Falk.
Thank you. Mr. Sahu, you have been normally first, so if you would like to provide an answer, we'll start with you.
Sure. I think that when it comes to community desires, if there's an overwhelming amount of folks that want to have a pool, community center, and we're willing to pay for it, I would echo what the mayor says. I agree with that. I think those are great ideas, but great ideas must also be financially viable as well, and something that we as residents are willing to take on as part of our taxes. So I'm open to it, and I would not oppose something if there's a majority of folks that want this. But as far as making it a staple of my policy, I can't say it is, but you know, that's all I have to say. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Blair, did you want to respond?
Sure. Projects like this would appear on the city's capital improvement plan. We have, I believe it looks out 7 years, for major expenditures in the city, from fire engines to parking lots. So there's never been a pool on that list, nor has a pool been brought up at any of the public budget workshops. That's the first step. For residents who are interested for having a pool in Rochester Hills, let's get it on the capital improvement plan so that our team can fund it. This is not an inexpensive project, and it carries substantial risk as well to the city. Now, we also have private pools available, so I'm still not convinced of the need. We've got a pool in the Brookwood subdivision, there's a pool at the OPC, there's private swim clubs. I'm concerned about how this would be funded. I'd like to keep taxes low, and I like to take our money for parks and recreation and use that to improve and maintain the assets that we already have. And that's what we're doing. That's why you're seeing new parking lots at Bloomer and Borden Park. That's why you're seeing improvements like new ranger stations at Innovation Hills and a new park office. So that's where I think the funds should go, and I'm generally not in favor of a pool unless someone can bring it to the planning, budget workshop, and we can make the numbers work. Then we'll consider it.
Thank you. Ms. Paviani?
Yeah, I think the most important part of this question is, what does the community want? And I put trust in this community to tell us what they want. Mayor Barnett, you said that there was a survey out, and the survey, from what I read in the newspaper, was 400 people responded, which is less than 0.5% of the population. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that is not necessarily a community survey that I would put a lot of weight into, and I would spend time to actually go canvassing door to door, ask the community what we actually want, like get an actual ear from the community that way instead, because I think that is the most important thing.
Question was posed, is that a reasonable survey? And it should be noted that the city went out and hired an expert, a professional firm, and these firms take a look at the demographics of a community. It's not about every person responding. You know, as we enter into a presidential election, that CNN can poll 600 people across the entire nation, coast to coast, and be within 3 or 4 points of an accurate poll if they do the demographics right. So a 400-person poll is exactly indicative of our community's position, plus or minus, if they do the demographics right. And we hired an outside firm to make sure it was statistically significant.
Thank you. Next question.
Okay. Good evening. So glad that you're here. Great to see everybody. We talk a lot about the environment in Rochester Hills, and it, without a doubt, Mayor and Councilman, it's a big issue for everybody that lives here. I know that there's been some work done, but I still have to question what we're really going to do to our community by allowing drilling, supposedly not fracking, drilling to include horizontal drilling under your homes without your permission, as was granted for a rather small fee per resident. Brian, maybe you can remind me what the amount of money we got to allow them to do that. And I'd like to know what your position is on allowing oil or natural gas drilling originating in our parks to include, I believe, the ones that have already been done in Nowicki Park and at the cemetery. Evidently, people don't complain at the cemetery when things get shaken up too much. But the rest of us, I think, will. And I'm still very concerned that we're using public places and we leased the ability to do these things in our city, our beautiful, wonderful, green city. And in fact, the city paid to fight. I have the documentation about what the city charter and people that said that this violated the city charter.
We need to understand your question.
I want to know what your position is on eradicating any rights to drilling in our beautiful city, and your position going forward to drilling, hydraulic fracking, or using our public parks or any public spaces for this use.
Thank you. We're going to start with David Blair.
Well, you know, a lot of this is new information to me. Nobody's come to council in the last 4 years for approval of any sort of activity in the city of Rochester Hills. And without a little bit more information, I don't think I'm equipped to answer your question at this time.
Mr. Barnett.
Yeah, it's like a time warp. That question hasn't been a question in our community for 6 or 8 years. There is no leases signed in the community. There is no public talk of drilling. There is nothing. It's like your information is exceptionally old. We have talked about that question, I think maybe 6 or 7, at least one, maybe 2 elections ago for me, and it was decided. First of all, there's only really one opinion that anybody up here can have, and that is that if you recall the issue, it's a state situation and a private homeowner's right situation. The city was ruled the city didn't have any impact in those. So, but the bottom line is, for anyone thinking here that anything is happening, from my lips to your ears, that gentleman saying that is the first I've heard those words in probably 7 years. It is not an issue that is anywhere near our community. It's a dead issue, and I've not heard one thing about it since probably 2 elections ago for me.
Thank you. Ms. Paviani?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. That's a very important question for our community. I have heard of concerns from the community as I'm canvassing and going door to door. My position is I will do everything I can to not ever have that happen in our city, because that is a huge effect on the environment. And it's just a flat no for me. However, it is, like Mayor Barnett said, it is a state and homeowner issue, but I will take my stance on it and say no.
Thank you. Mr. Sahu?
Thank you for the question. And I would say, first and foremost, that for me personally and from whatever power City Council would have with jurisdiction on public land, I would not support drilling of any kind.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, my name's Katie Russell. I was born and raised in Rochester, but moved away after high school and moved to a city. And I came back here about 3 years ago, and I was horrified that there's no public transit in Rochester. I go to other communities in Oakland County, and I see buses, but I see none here. And to me, it's an environmental issue and also a ridiculous waste of money that families have to buy every adult member a car. And I heard there was some resistance from the community. I know there's a group that's promoting buses. And I hear there was resistance from the community, and God only knows why that resistance is there. I think it has to do with snobbery, in my opinion. However, maybe the reluctance is with the city council. I don't know. But somehow we need to move ahead environmentally and also to help families out and get a bus system in Rochester Hills. Would any of you like to comment on this situation?
So we're going to start with Mr. Barnett.
Thank you. This is an interesting issue and one I've been leading on for probably the last 8 years. And by leading on it, it involves meeting with the people around us. The Metro Detroit area has had a very disconnected transit situation with SMART, with DDOT, with all the different agencies, and with Oakland County, frankly, not having great transit. One of the things I said earlier in one of my comments is that I listen to the residents, and I would be honest with you, understanding your position on this, that people asking for transit in my 17 years as mayor has not been a top 10 issue. That being said, the residents of our community have supported transit as a part of the Oakland County millage. And so now my job as a leader is to work with the leadership at Oakland County to make sure that those dollars that you're spending, about $4 million of Rochester Hills taxpayer money going into transit, are put into a system that best benefits our community. The first thing they did was they improved services to OPC. I was at the OPC today. That's an incredible organization that does transit a lot better than I could do it, a lot better than the city could do it. I'm glad that they're receiving additional funding because they're putting it to good use. That is going to continue to be funded. Outside of that, what I'm really advocating for in our community, they've talked about a bus line up Rochester Road and a bus line up to Walmart from Pontiac, is trying to understand how the rest of our community can benefit from that system. Many folks in our community are familiar with Uber and Lyft, and those systems work fairly well. And if people in our community could get credits to work as if they were ordering an Uber or a Lyft, I think more of our community would benefit than people walking from their home to Rochester Road to pick up a bus, to take them to Oakland Mall, to change the bus, to take them down to the Tiger game. That's a very long process. So the point of your question is, listen, our residents said they supported transit. They're willing to pay for it. My job as a leader is to be at that table, and for the past 3 or 4 years, I've been fighting for Rochester Hills residents to get every dollar that we send to Oakland County back into our community in the best and most beneficial way possible.
Thank you. Ms. Ariani?
Yeah, this is actually a topic that's near and dear to my heart. I actually am an Uber driver in the mornings. I drive people to work for hours every morning. And sometimes with surge prices, Uber can get to $40 for 3 miles. That's outrageous. We can't do that. So public transportation is needed in Rochester Hills. I drive a lot of our citizens to work every morning, a lot of their students to school every morning. We need to offer public transportation. The first step that I believe that we should do is an initiative like Smart Flex, which essentially is a public transportation Uber system. Our neighboring communities have it, and if we get it, we can connect to these neighboring communities, and it costs $2 to $8 a ride, because it is done by our public transportation dollars. So this is the first step to connect our cities to each other and be able to access here to Washington, here to Pontiac, and just have an interconnected city system that way.
Thank you. Mr. Sahu?
Thank you. I think this is a really good question, and one that was quite clear that residents here in Rochester Hills wanted to opt into that county-wide opt-in for public transit. And if we are going to be paying for it, I agree that we should be getting the most bang for our buck. That being said, how public transit looks like in Rochester Hills being a suburban community, it may take a different form than a more dense area. But I think that ideas like Ariane says about flex, I know that they've implemented that in Pontiac, if I'm not mistaken, and it seems to function pretty well and is clearly a viable alternative to the private applications. So I'm all for it, and I would not be a roadblock in any way, although I understand that a lot of this is being solved on the county commission level between SMART and the county commissioners.
Thank you. Mr. Blair?
Thank you. Ms. Russell, I want to set the record very straight. The city is not anti-transport. Was there opposition? Well, sure. We weren't involved in the process. A lot of this process at the county level was far from transparent, and I was disappointed. I was disappointed, and I did not support the process for that reason. I've yet to see, to this day, a transport solution from the county that meets the needs of our residents and is a good use of their tax dollar. Now, that being said, it's here. It's here, it passed, and public transport is coming to the city of Rochester Hills. So what I'll pledge to the city is to change our stance to do what we do best, which is work together with our new partners. We're going to take the system that was put forth by the county, and we're going to do everything we possibly can to make sure the residents get the most value possible from it. But this is the situation we're in. We are not anti-public transportation in any way, shape, or form. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
I'd be interested in your vision for the city for the next 4 years, how you would accomplish that vision and how you would pay for it. I'd like all the candidates to share.
Thank you. Ms. Paviani, I believe it's your turn to go first.
Yes, that is true. So my vision for the city. My vision for the city is one of inclusiveness. I want this city to be somewhere where the next generation can continue to afford to live. So your children, when they graduate high school and graduate college, they don't have to move out because they can't afford rent here. So I want to include more affordable housing, which is a big one. I also want to protect our green spaces. Our green spaces are something that is a character of the city. It is something that we cherish and love, and we need to invest more of our money and our millage into the green spaces because we had a 6-year gap of purchasing green spaces, and to me that's alarming. So the way that we could do this is we have millage funds for green space already, and our budget is secure. You guys as citizens are really good at paying your taxes. Our budget is safe for the next 7 years according to a city council meeting that just happened in July. We are in the black. So our budget will be able to take care of all of the issues and the visions for the city that we want as people, because we together need to speak up for what we want as this city.
Thank you. Mr. Sahu.
Thank you. I think this is a great question because it's important that we have a vision ahead and hopefully something that can be unifying amongst all of our residents here. I think, and me personally speaking as someone younger, prospective home buyer, someone who wants to put down roots and have a family, I want to find ways that we can better attract younger people to our city, because if we fall behind and are unable to attract those who are going to be paying into the city in the future, we're going to be playing catch up. So I want to find a way to have sustainable development within our city that encourages not only lower prices when it comes to rent or home ownership, but also better quality for what we deserve as a community. And most importantly, I think that we really need to reprioritize our green spaces and expand in, if not enhancing what we have already. I think that we have some underutilized areas, and we also have areas that have just come in as of last week into our public land that we ought to really think as citizens, what do we want to be doing with this land? So it's a way of finding balance and a way forward that we can all get behind. So, and as far as paying for it, as it has been mentioned, our budget is very fiscally responsible. In fact, the proposal here for millages is actually going down which I'm very happy with to see. And I think that we don't need to really break the bank in order to meet these goals. It's more about having the conversations and the outreach with residents and getting people more on board with what's happening.
Thank you. Mr. Blair. Thank
you. You know, we have some pretty impressive track records here in the city. In that survey the mayor and I have been referencing, 94% satisfaction. Residents rate the quality of life in Rochester as good. 98% of residents feel safe in their home. 85% are satisfied with snow removal. These are incredible numbers. When I look forward, I'm really looking in like the 4 years, right? The next 4 years, if I were to earn a second term, would be not making any drastic changes. I want to focus on that 6%. Why are 6% of the residents not satisfied with life in Rochester Hills? I want to dig deep into that 6% so we can continue to improve. That 15% that are dissatisfied with snow removal, what areas, why? What can we do to our equipment, our processes, our procedures to be more effective? Excellence is the goal, and the team here at the city does an outstanding job at listening to the residents, analyzing the data, and making the right decision. I don't want to stand here and project my plan for the next 4 years. I want the citizens to speak. I want the data to drive those decisions. We on council are going to approve those dollars for the projects that we see fit, and that's how I see the next 4 years unfolding.
Thank you. Mr. Barnett.
One of the advantages of being, or disadvantages of being an incumbent is that you can see what my priorities are by looking at the way this community has been run for the past 17 years. And as was just referenced, based on the community's support of their satisfaction with the city's running, that we're on the right track. You are living in a top 10 city, according to Money Magazine, according to CNN, anywhere in the country. You're living in the second safest city in the nation, the safest in Michigan 7 years in a row. We're pouring millions of dollars into improving our infrastructure every single year. We have a park system that's visited more than the Lions and the Red Wings last year combined. You love our parks. We are doing, hopefully, a great job in what matters most. Your home values in the city, if you're a homeowner in the audience tonight, your home has never been worth more than it is as you sit here this evening. So you've seen what my priorities are in the last 17 years. 4 years ago, I sat on this dais, and someone said, Mayor, what are you going to do for the next 4 years? How are you going to keep this going? In the last 4 years, we've created Innovation Hills, the most popular park in the state of Michigan. We've reinvented Auburn Road, and the Auburn Road corridor was voted the #1 project in the state and one of the top projects in the country, all in this city in the last 4 years. We've added the city's first splash pad, and we've done it all while, as just was mentioned, we're reducing your taxes this year. This city is in the best financial situation of any city in Michigan, and we're providing the best service of any city in Michigan. That's my priorities. These aren't platitudes. These aren't hopeful suggestions or ideas that I have on some wall. These are things that I've delivered with an incredible team, both internally and externally, collaborating with others. If you like the way the city's been run for 17 years, you like what we've accomplished, you believe in those things I just mentioned, I'm asking for your continued support because that's exactly where we're headed for the next 4.
Thank you. Another question?
Should I sit? Yeah, yes. You hold it. Okay. Good evening. I have been fortunate to see just the incredible leadership in nonprofit in Rochester Hills from both Mayor Barnett and Councilman Blair, and have seen firsthand just support and presence that didn't necessarily bring a lot of fanfare or recognition, that has been really transformational for nonprofits in Rochester Hills. Bringing nonprofits together, supporting inclusion, and allowing nonprofits to work together to grow and thrive and support people in need here in Rochester Hills. So I'd just love to hear some of that highlighted because I appreciate it so much, and continued support for nonprofits in Rochester Hills. Thank you, Mayor Barnett and Councilman Blair, for that leadership for nonprofits in Rochester Hills.
Thank you. Mr. Sahu.
What's the question?
Yeah, there was no question.
I think please say that again in front of the microphone.
Just love to hear, from Mayor and Councilman Blair, and then, others, just highlighting that support over the years for nonprofits, so others in the audience can hear. and a vision for the future in supporting nonprofits in Rochester Hills.
Okay. Again, it was directed to two people, but it said everybody. We are going to do everybody. Mr. Sahu, it's your turn to go first.
Okay, for sure. Thank you so much for that question. I think that we have some amazing services and nonprofits here in Rochester Hills. One that I find especially exceptional would be Neighborhood House and the work that they do there. I think that a community is composed of not just government and people, but also people who help others. And I think that we're very blessed to have charitable organizations and people who are willing to lift their neighbors up here. So if there's anything that government can do to enhance and support these organizations, I'm all for it.
Thank you. Mr. Blair?
Thank you. Jenny, I appreciate the comments. It is a pleasure to work with you in both a professional and a civic capacity. We value what you bring to the community. I love our partnership. I love the partnership we have with all of the vibrant nonprofits. I'm associated directly with several of them. I am involved in the Chamber of Commerce, who advocates for business owners in our city. I'm a member of the Rochester Rotary Club, one of the largest philanthropic fraternities in the world. I'm a member of the Rochester Masonic Lodge, Stony Creek number 5, the oldest Masonic lodge in Oakland County. And this is the foundation of our community. Is the nonprofits and the generous residents of our community that support those nonprofits. I challenge you to find a community more generous, more caring, more kind, more compassionate towards their neighbors than the Rochester community. And that's why I love living here and why I'll continue to be involved in those organizations and support nonprofits as a whole in the city of Rochester Hills.
Thank you. Mr. Barnett?
Yes, thank you. If you're going to ask someone to lead a community, you should look at their involvement in that community. And your question was about the support of nonprofits. I'm, as Mr. Blair mentioned, exceptionally proud of the way our city has engaged in nonprofits. And personally, it's a passion for mine as well. Of course, I've been an elected member of the city for 17 years as a mayor, 6 years prior to that as a council person. But I've served in so many roles as a leader in SEMCOG, as a leader in MML. I've been active with the Chamber of Commerce. I've been a member of the Rotary for 15 years. I'm a past president of the Oakland University Alumni Association. I've been on my Homeowners Association. I'm the vice president of the D-Man Foundation, an organization that works with paraplegic young individuals. I volunteered at the OPC for Meals on Wheels. I've volunteered for Gifts for All God's Children. I'm heavily involved with Dutton Farms, not just in saying it or writing in a check, but we hire Dutton farmers to work every year in this city. If you travel upstairs as you leave here tonight, you'll pass an art gallery filled with paintings from Dutton farmers. I've funded and founded a scholarship that goes to a Rochester Community School student that goes into public service in honor of my father. I've read in every elementary school. I have Mondays with the mayor with the seniors every single Monday at the OPC for 17 years. I live and breathe this community because I care. I have the track record that shows whether it's civic engagement or service as a council member and mayor, there is no one more involved or passionate about leading this community. And I love standing up with people like Jenny Brown and supporting organizations like Dutton Farm because that is what makes Rochester Hills special.
Thank you. Applause at the end only. Applause at the end only. Thank you. Ms. Paviani?
Yeah, I am a big supporter of nonprofits. I do love Neighborhood House. So I actually moved back to the States about 4 years ago. And I've been focused on obtaining my degree to be able to partner and be in the political system of our city. But before that, I actually worked in an anti-human trafficking nonprofit in Australia for 4 years. And before that, I worked at Kensington Church, doing a lot of volunteer work with our students, your youth, your children. So to me, nonprofits are essential lifeblood of this city. And it's something that I will commit to when I'm mayor to focus on. And how do we help Dutton Farms more? How do we boost civic engagement with the nonprofits around in our city? Not just showing up to different events, but like actually getting our 214 employees of the city to be able to spend time there during their workday and even volunteer and be part of just even a job description too, because it should be an important aspect of the job in the city to actually participate in nonprofits too. So.
Thank you. Okay, next question.
Mrs. Paviani, what are you going to do tangibly differently than the current Mayor Barnett with his current track record? And also, taking into consideration what's going on in Warren with the charter compared to our charter. Secondly, Mr. Sahu, what are you going to do differently than Mr. Blair?
Okay, you people keep giving me challenges. So, Ms. Paviani,
Yeah, how much time do we have? No, I'm just kidding.
you have 2 minutes.
Okay. Well, I mean, a big priority for me is purchasing green space. There's been a lot of grants that have been left on the table over the years from the state that we can access and purchase green space with. So that is a priority. I want to protect our city from developing these green spaces that we've seen, for instance, the condos that have been built on Adams Road and Hamlin. I'm not a fan of those. I'm going to be honest. I think they're atrocious. They're oversight and everything, and they're compact. Yeah, yes, they are very compact. This is something that I wanted to protect, that land that was there beforehand, the one that, so we don't overshadow beautiful parks like Innovation Hills. So I would like to have purchased that instead. Another thing that I want to do is bring in public transportation, like we've talked about. I think that will alleviate some financial pressures for everyone in the city, so we don't have to have 4 or 5 cars for a family. The focus of mine is to make sure that our citizens feel like they can continue to live here, they want to live here, and they continue to see the city that they chose to live here as we develop and redevelop areas. So that is one way that I would like to go forward in the next 4 years. And I think there was a second part to your question. Can I ask for clarity on that second part?
Was there a second part?
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Term limits, yes. I think the term limits are pretty clear. We have a two-term, 4-year limit charter, and then it does get a little ambiguous, and I know we're going to talk about that. But the first thing that I want to do is bring it back to the citizens, so the citizens can decide what we initially voted on when we set term limits. It's not up to us. We should have the citizens decide on that. And finally, for once, nail down what that means.
Thank you. Mr. Sahu.
Thank you. I really appreciate this question. And as far as what I would like to do differently, I've thought a lot about this even before considering to be on the ballot. And the one thing that really motivated me to run was my disagreement with what I see as a bend over backwards mentality that City Council has when it comes to developments. I feel that we ought to be strict with enforcing our ordinances, and we ought to be much more conservative instead of liberal when it comes to, say, things like a wetland waiver or conditional use zoning. I feel that this would be one major difference between myself and the current incumbent, and thank you so much for your question.
Thank you. No applause till the end. Thank you. Mr. Barnett or Mr. Blair, would you like to say anything?
Yes. Two parts to the answer. First, let's start with the second part about term limits. And this, I have no qualms with Ms. Paviani. I met her tonight for the first time and wish her well. I would say what you just heard in her answer is one of the key distinctions between someone who has experience and someone who doesn't. She said a lot of things that just aren't true. Starting with term limits.
Mr. Barnett, you have to talk about what you would do, not what she would do.
Absolutely. Let's talk about term limits. It is expressly clear what our residents wanted when they talked about term limits. It's in our charter. I see Mr. Beaton over here, one of our city founders and forefathers, knows exactly what it said. It's crystal clear. I'll read it. The mayor shall be prohibited from seeking re-election as mayor after having served 2 full consecutive terms. However, this limitation shall not prohibit election and serving as mayor as a write-in candidate at any time. There is nothing ambiguous about that statement. It's been challenged, and we have multiple attorney opinions not related to the city that suggest it. This gives it gives Rochester Hills voters the absolute right to pick whoever they want to choose. There's not a loophole here. There's nothing ambiguous. It's just not accurate. And to say anything different is an insult to all of you and your intelligence and your ability to read this charter. I'm doing exactly what the charter prescribes, and all of you determine whether or not I've deserved a second term. And you agreed with that in 15, and you agreed with that in 19. I'm following the exact will of our residents to the period. Now, the comment made earlier about what you would do differently in talking about green space, it's another thing that's really important. My opponent mentioned Legacy. That's the name of the condos next to Innovation Hills. Do you think anybody just wanted those there? You have to know the backstory to understand that. That's critically important. That was the single most toxic site in our city. There were barrels of garbage and junk that you could visibly see from Adams and M59. And guess what we just put there? A child's playground and park. So the city went out and said, what are we going to do about this? We have a $13 million problem that we need to get fixed because that leakage is going into our park. So we met with the neighbors. There's 13 homeowners that live immediately adjacent. And we said with the property owners, this is either going to be developed as a commercial property or as a residential property. And if it's residential, there's less traffic and there's a higher level of cleanup. And we asked the people most affected. That's good governance, folks. And 13 of 13 said we prefer residential. And that's why you see what you see. There's an incredibly important backstory. In order to clean up that property, that's what we had to do. The green space story is one we're exceptionally proud of. I'll put my green record up against anyone because we've delivered. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Blair, do you want to address this?
Yes, of course. We need to be very careful about using words like, what would you do differently? Because when you go in with a mindset to change, that's not the right thing to do when residents are very clearly happy with the way that their city is run. We do an outstanding job delivering services in the city. 94% of our residents are happy. 98% feel safe at home. We're doing our job incredibly well thanks to the very talented teammates that work for the city. Now, does that mean that I'm not going to look at things differently? Absolutely not. Mr. Stahu mentioned something that has impacted everyone that sits here on City Council, and that's the fact of overdevelopment in the city. We are scrutinizing development projects like never before in response to concerns raised by our voters. We're listening to you. We're listening to you, and if we're going to do something different, it is going to be a calculated move based on data. I plan on rushing into nothing in a city that's doing so much, so well.
Thank you. Okay. We're going to start the next question where we should have started this time with Mr. Blair. Next question, please.
Oh, okay. Hi, my name's Kim Bailiff, and I've lived here for over 20 years. And my question is about fiscal responsibility and transparency. I understand that the city is in good financial standing, very stable and sound. However, I have questions about the transparency of spending within the office of the mayor. My understanding that during Mr. Barnett's tenure as the president of the Mayors of America, he traveled to South Africa, Denmark, and probably 8 or 10 other places around the world and the country. He was only supposed to go 4 places. He went to Hawaii as well, and also took his family, photographers, his assistant, clerk's office, a couple staff members. And my question is, how will you, as mayor moving forward, be more fiscally conservative and transparent with taxpayer money?
So I'm going to generalize this question to how will you be more transparent and fiscally conservative in general? Because we have people besides Mayor here. We're still going to start with Mr. Blair.
Thank you. Ms. Bailiff, it's not just that we're doing well. We're doing exemplary with your tax dollars. We're in the top 5% of communities in Michigan for our financial position. We have the lowest debt in the region, the second lowest taxes in Oakland County. This is the best run city financially that you'll find in the area. We lowered your taxes on Monday, and we're adding 10 firefighters and 2 full-time sheriff deputies without raising your taxes. No one is going to be an advocate for getting the most value out of a tax dollar than me and my colleagues on the City Council. It is a priority. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Barnett.
Yes, thank you. For context, Ms. Bailiff was my opponent in the last election in 2019. Appreciate the question, Kim. Good to see you again. Listen, the things that Mr. Blair said, and I'll answer the personal questions, it's fine. I have lived in a glass house for 17 years, and I expect it. the core of that question is actually what I'm pretty proud of, that I was the Conference of Mayors president. Across all the mayors across the entire country, in every big city with an airport, an NFL team, and an NBA team, they looked at me and said, he is best to lead our nation. And I led our nation when we went into COVID. It was one of the most incredible times that I sat eyeball to eyeball across the President of the United States of one of 5 mayors, 5 governors, and 5 hospital CEOs at Operation Warp Speed when we talked about getting vaccines out into the community. That was an incredible opportunity. And those trips that you mentioned were all paid for by the Conference of Mayors, as I was an officer with the Conference of Mayors. Related to the state of the financial situation in our city, ladies and gentlemen, I promise you, we are the envy of every community in Michigan. We have fund balances that are healthy. I know what we're spending for the next 7 years. We have a 7-year financial forecast. We're the first community to do a 3-year budget. We're lowering your taxes, and we're AAA bond rated by every agency you have. We have the lowest debt of any city in Michigan, and it'll all completely fall off next year from a project from 20 years ago. Your money that I am responsible for is one of the most sacred duties that I take and hold responsible, and I ask you and encourage you to examine every page of the budget. It's as transparent as it can be. You will be exceptionally proud of the way Rochester Hills manages your money.
Thank you. Ms. Paviani?
Yeah, thank you for your question. I appreciate it very much. I think it is important that we are transparent with our money. We are really well budgeted, and that is because we have an excellent accounts team, CFO, city council. Everyone is part of this. It's not just one person. For the traveling, because obviously I'm running for mayor, so I'm going to speak on that one too. I do think that is very transparent too. We need to be open about that. The travel budget went from $13,000 to $40,000 a year, and that is excessive for a mayor position. Let's be honest. So that needs to be cut. That does need to be cut. I can travel on my own dime. I do it all the time. We need to be transparent about that. And also other issues like spending money on the state of the city, the excessive spending of dancers and fire and all the things that happened recently in August for the state of the city. I think that was wasted money, and we need to trim that down also. There are areas that we need to figure out where we can trim, because there are trimming to be able to be done. We don't need to send out flyers with magnets to every water bill while raising your water bill. So these are different areas that our transparency needs to be spoken about for the budget, and we need to fix.
I'd like to rebut that if I could, please.
Thank you.
One thing
30 seconds.
Yep, one thing that you should know is in that mayor's budget, Ms. Paviani, the budget's not for the mayor's travel. It's for the mayor's department, which is accounting, fiscal, the CFO you mentioned, media, and the mayor's department. It's much more than just one individual. And you'll be happy to know that in all the extra spending that you saw in one of the most successful State of the Cities ever is all money I raised privately from private individuals who support our fireworks show and events like that, like Light the Village and the State of the City. Over $100,000 a year I raise every year privately to fund those extra things. Those aren't being paid for with taxpayer dollars.
I'd like to rebut that as well.
We need to let Mr. Sahu answer. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. So as far as it goes with municipal government and financial responsibility, that is a huge, huge deal. We have to be very financially prudent because we don't know when another 2020 could come around the corner. And we don't want to be asking residents for more because we were not prepared. So while things are very good right now, I think that we should be somewhat tempered in how we spend, because as taxpayers, we're spending a lot into the system. We can be a little bit more, less lavish when it comes to this. I think it rubs some the wrong way, and I can understand that. As far as transparency in government, that's why City Council looks at and approves and oversees this budgeting process. The administration proposes, and then there's a workshopping that happens in order to ensure that it is open, public, and that people know what is being spent on. Because when you pay into the system, you ought to know exactly what you're getting out of it. So thank you for the question.
Thank you.
I'd like to rebut that as well.
30 seconds.
I went ahead and did the math. That travel budget is 0.0002% of our city's budget. And I do want to comment on the state of the city. I am incredibly proud of this city. I am incredibly proud of this city, and this is an opportunity for me, my neighbors, to celebrate what's the envy, as Brian said, of municipalities in every direction. I support the money that we spend to put on a State of the City. It is unheard of among municipalities.
Time, Mr. Blair.
I love the State of the City.
Thank you.
I do too.
I do too.
Next question.
Thank you. I know the mayor leads a large staff of folks. Could each of you share your experience in managing of similar sized? Thank you.
Okay. I believe we're starting with Mr. Barnett this time.
Well, thank you for the question. Yes, being mayor in the city of Rochester Hills is a full-time job. That's a little bit unusual in the state of Michigan. There's only 10 of us that run cities without city managers. And so on day one, you're responsible for the livelihood of hundreds and hundreds of people. About 700 people get a paycheck from the city of Rochester Hills over the course of a year. I take that responsibility incredibly seriously. There are 4 unions that are part of leadership that you have to deal with on a regular basis. And I just got a note from the union leadership yesterday. It said, Mayor Barnett, 2491, our AFSCME unit, proudly endorses your candidacy for mayor of Rochester Hills. You're a proven leader of and cultivated an environment grounded in open communication, fair contracts, and strong union support. You have to have good understanding of how to work with the unions in this position. You have to understand how to work with your neighboring communities, how to work in Lansing, how to work in Washington. I have exemplified those by having leadership positions nationally, locally, and regionally. And I've taken that experience and I've put it to use here in the city for the things you've heard about already mentioned today. I'm 100% dialed in on this job. I feel it's my honor to serve you as your mayor. I wake up every morning passionate about this gig, about the opportunity to serve, and I feel I'm best equipped on this stage up here clearly to continue the job.
Thank you. Ms. Paviani?
Yes. So my background is not necessarily in local government. I don't have mayor on my resume already, and I don't know if any of our past mayors have had mayor on their resume when they were first elected. So no, I don't know how to lead a 700-person team, but that is why we have excellent staff. We have, I am not the only one that's going to be in charge of this. It is a group effort. Just like Mayor Barnett, he did not know how to do this when he first started. Mr. Blair, you did not know how to be city councilman, but when you first started, this is part of electing someone new. There is definitely going to be a learning period, but that is just generally what happens with an election. So if you give me grace, I will learn on the job just like everyone else in the past mayor profile has done.
Thank you. Mr. Sahu?
Thank you for the question. So in my past experience, I was a campaign manager for a point in time, and you learn a lot when in a high-pressure situation like that to learn how to delegate duties and be able to listen and understand and provide and take feedback from people. I can't say that I could manage 700 people, but I can definitely manage 4 that manage maybe 5 or 6 on top of that. And when it comes to dealing with people in general, I would like to pride myself on the fact that I'm able to work with people that I can disagree, because I can understand where someone else is coming from, and if I can do that, I would hope that they could do the same thing for me too. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Blair?
Well, thank you. This is a very good question, very close to home for me. I know what it takes to put a good team together. I deal with a smaller house. I have 4 full-time employees and 3 contract workers and 2 business partners. But you know what? That doesn't change my approach. I adore the team that I've built. I treat them like gold. I pay them fairly. I make them know that they're valued. And that's the way that this city operates. You know, I'm faced with a unique challenge because I need someone who's good in technology and who's also has an excellent personality. And that's a really tough order. The city needs outstanding customer service as well as whatever skills we're looking for, because we interact with our residents and we want that experience to be outstanding. And we're doing that. We're doing that. 94% of residents are satisfied and say that their interaction with a Rochester Hills teammate was professional. That's for city government. These numbers are almost unbelievable. Now, I'll tell you, I'm concerned because we've, on City Council, never been approached by Ms. Paviani to talk about a budget, to talk about a relationship between City Council and the new mayor. I'd welcome that opportunity because if you're elected, you need to hit the ground running. And making sure your budget's in order and that City Council is on board is going to be critical for that. So I'll be waiting for your call.
I have a 30-second rebuttal, please.
30 seconds.
Thank you. I would only say this, Ms. Paviani, our paths are not the same. Before I had the audacity to run for mayor, which is a big job, I sat in the crowd, just like this audience, and I watched City Council for a long time before I even had the guts to run for City Council. And then I served on this body, on the City Council, for 6 years, meeting the players, understanding the issues, getting my hands wet, understanding what a budget is like before I thought I could be mayor. I never thought I could just come in and the first introduction to city life would be running as mayor. That's not the same path. Being a City Council person, being involved in committees gives you an incredible base of knowledge in which you need in order to run this organization.
Time. Thank you. Next question.
Hi, my name's Mike Glover, and I've lived in the city about 15 years, and I have a real softball question for you. I like to play pickleball, and I'm wondering if we can get some more courts put in and maybe get the lights turned on at the courts we have.
Thank you. We're starting with Ms. Paviani.
I mean, that's an easy answer. I'm going to say yes, because pickleball is growing in popularity, so we're going to have to add some courts too and turn some lights on, LED ones.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Sahu?
Yeah, I'm completely down. That sounds great, and I mean, it's something that's very popular among residents here and continuing to grow, so.
Thank you. Mr. Blair?
Well, Mr. Glover, have you been to Avondale Park? Because that's the most recent pickleball courts that we've unveiled. They're beautiful, and that's a park that not a lot of our residents visit. It's on the south side of the city. You should definitely check it out. Pickleball, I wouldn't have known what it was a few years ago. When I was over at the OPC today talking to voters and residents, I heard the word pickleball like 5 or 6 times. And I think I need to get out there and at least try it. It would be a great photo for the campaign. So pickleball all the way.
Thank you. Mr. Barnett?
Well, know your audience. We have a community that loves pickleball. I was actually asked to speak about our pickleball story in D.C. earlier this year. Mr. Blair's correct. We've just added 4 new courts at Avondale Park. If you haven't been there, we have 8 courts that are new about a year and a half ago. We have the lights coming on, and we're actually talking about improving that entire area. Pickleballers are not afraid to say what they want to see out there, and we're listening. We are really proud of the pickleball explosion in our city, and we've got it included in the budget in the years to come, too.
Thank you. Next question.
Thank you. My name is John Shivish. I've been in Rochester since 1992, and I'd like to know if any of you who are running for open positions in this government would ever live in the development areas that you are proposing or want to propose on Rochester Road or Auburn. If any of you want to live there, I don't think you'd be doing that where you lived, because it's atrocious for the traffic. We wouldn't need officers because of traffic jams, accidents, and crime. More you develop, more traffic's going to go on Rochester Road and Auburn. It doesn't go on Tinkin. Not that kind of traffic goes 24 hours a day. Traffic is an hour and a half.
Sir, what is your question?
My question is, would any of you live in the area that is being developed now?
Thank you. We're starting with Mr. Sahu.
I think that's a great question, and it hits on multiple points here. As far as living in those areas that are being developed now, no, and there's a lot of reasons why. I don't think the quality is up to standards of Rochester Hills, to be quite frank. I feel personally that the price to square footage for a lot of these areas is just a little exorbitant, and as you mentioned, traffic is the other big thing. It kind of locks you in if you're constantly stuck at home. I live off of Livernois, and Livernois can get busy sometimes, but something that Livernois, especially between Avon and Walton, has that other areas in our city don't, is that it has 4-lane road. And this 4-lane road, while it can get difficult to kind of navigate sometimes and get your way in, it's a whole lot better than being backed up on the north and south side of Livernois. So I think that the issue that we've been seeing here is that our infrastructure, especially in terms of bandwidth on our roads, the capacity here, is being outstretched by the development that's been happening, and it's only compounding the issue. So I hear you out, and I'm with you on this.
Thank you. Mr. Blair?
Thank you. What you've described is a state road. Rochester Road's a state road. We actually have 4 different types of roads in the cities. We've got state roads, county roads, city streets, and private roads. You know, people want to live here. They're willing to put up with the traffic. It is hard to find a place to live in Rochester Hills. And we do have traffic. I sit in traffic. Every city has traffic. You know what this city doesn't have? Unemployment, vacancy in commercial and residential properties. Doesn't have any crime. Not much crime. 98% of our residents feel safe at home. We don't have debt. We don't have dysfunctional leadership. We don't have dirty water. We don't have crumbling roads. Our roads have never been as good as they are now. Satisfaction in our road network is up 19% in just my term. We're moving roadways from poor to fair and good condition. I'll take traffic. That's a challenge that I'll lean on our city experts, our engineers, to do the best we possibly can with what we've got. And I'll live with some traffic. I'll live with some traffic before I arbitrarily vote to widen streets or increase speed limits. I can live with some traffic as long as none of these things start to rear their ugly heads.
Thank you. Mr. Barnett?
Thank you. Mr. Shevich, good to see you. I know you've lived in Wildflower Sub for a long, long time and have been a long-time resident. You know, it's interesting. In a city that is doing so well, there are always challenges. There are always things that we could do better, and we have to challenge ourselves to never think that we've reached the pinnacle, that we've reached a nexus of excellence. We always want to be chasing things. Traffic is one of those things. Traffic is one of those things. You know, it's not a terrible problem to have, as Mr. Blair was mentioning. You know, if you're a restaurant owner, it's much better to be a restaurant owner with a 45-minute wait because you're busy than a restaurant owner where nobody wants to come, right? We are a place that people want to be because we have great amenities, because we have great housing stock. But we have to manage that traffic. Some of it's happening because communities around us continue to grow, but we still have a responsibility. One of the things that we've done under my leadership, some people love this, some people don't, but we've added a lot of roundabouts to try to move traffic more efficiently. We had 0 when I became mayor. We have 10 now in the city. You almost can't get to the center of the city without coming by a roundabout. They move traffic more efficiently, they're less expensive to build, and they're much safer. You asked if I'd live in anywhere. I would live in any subdivision in our city. I can't afford all of them, but I love our city. And when I walk door to door, I'm reminded how each neighborhood has a uniqueness to it. They have a small, tight-knit community. We've got $1 million neighborhoods. We've got smaller neighborhoods with a couple $100,000 houses. But the people are just as proud to live in certain areas of towns than they are in the other. And I love that feeling. It's one of the benefits of going door to door is to meet these people in their homes. My job as mayor is to make sure we're doing everything possible. In that survey that's been referenced a lot tonight, we asked residents if traffic was a problem. 51% said it was, so about half or half. We asked how long you spend in traffic. The average was less than 10 minutes. Less than 10 minutes as the average time spent in traffic. So what are we going to do? Are we going to blow out roads to save 10 minutes down to 5? I don't think that's what our community wants. We want to make sure we're managing both sides of this argument. And that's things like roundabouts and better technology can help us do that. That's what we've done under my leadership.
Thank you. I believe we're going to Ms. Paviani.
Yes. So I actually grew up on Auburn in the Brooklyn sub that got redeveloped recently. It is one of the reasons I actually wanted to run for mayor, because the Brooklyn sub is something, again, near to dear to my heart. And I know a lot of people talking to the neighbors there, their taxes are going up because their property taxes are going up. Your taxes will go up 5% every year. So they are going up because property taxes are going up. Brooklyn sub, to me, was somewhere use a good starter home subdivision. Someone my age with young families can move in, have a house and a yard in Rochester Hills until the development happened. Now it's about $300,000 to $400,000 for a house, and it's becoming a struggle for a young family to move in and have a yard and a house and have their kids in Rochester community schools. So yeah, I would love to live in Brooklyn sub, but personally, I can't live there anymore because I can't afford it. So that to me is the priority of the development. We need smarter development and making sure that we have the ability to keep our residents in the city.
Thank you. Next question.
to you.
Thank you. This question is directed towards the entire panel. The mayor cannot spend any funds without the approval of city council, and no city council member can act on their own. It takes 4 members of city council to approve anything, and city council must approve every budget and every spending item that the mayor has. So what I'd like to know from all of the candidates is what relationships have you developed with the city council to ensure that your agenda can be implemented on day one?
Thank you. We are starting with Mr. Blair.
Well, I just unanimously passed a 3-year budget with my council colleagues. As the mayor mentioned, we're the first city to implement a 3-year budget. This gives us a unique opportunity to plan not just for the immediate future, but that kind of middle term where your capital improvement plan and your 1-year budget, there's this middle ground, and to produce a unanimous 3-year budget for the last 8-10 years is incredible. This isn't the typical budget process. What happens is we're presented with a budget from each of the city departments. We work behind the scenes for weeks going through that budget, communicating with department directors to figure out what's needed, where are we sourcing it from, why is it this much, can we move money from this account? And those conversations go back and forth and back and forth. There were 50-some pages of questions and answers from council to the city staff and back to council for just this year's budget alone. And if you don't believe me, go on Legistar. You can download the entire packet and look at all the communication that went back and forth. We are heavily involved with budgeting, and there is a tremendous amount of trust that we're placing on the department directors in the city, and that is equally balanced by the amount of respect that they have for us. It is a beautiful relationship, and it's one of the reasons that this is the most productive local government in the state.
Thank you. Mr. Barnett.
Yes, thank you. The question about relationships with council. Everything in life, I tell my 2 boys, is about relationships. It's about how you interact, how you respect folks, and how you work together to get the common good done. Listen, our city is exemplary, and if you don't believe me, here's something you won't hear just about any other mayor say. Google our city. See what comes up. We've had only positive stories written about us in probably the last 7 or 8 years because we're doing it well, because we respect the relationship between the administration and the legislative branch. We work so well with our neighboring communities. We share employees with Shelby Township and Sterling Heights. Did you know that? Nobody knows that. We share employees. It's revolutionary. We're considered one of the most innovative governments around because we do things really uniquely, and I'm proud of that. Starts with a great relationship. And I want to say one more thing. That last answer was about the values of home in the Brooklands. You know who's happy about the values of homes in the Brooklands going up? People who own homes in the Brooklands, because at some point they're going to sell those homes. And last year across our city, north to south, east to west, the fastest growing property values in our city were in the Brooklands, an area years ago that most people didn't even think was part of Rochester Hills. The investment we have made is paying off in the pocketbooks of the people who live there. That's good governance making a difference in a formerly difficult part of town.
Thank you. Ms. Paviani.
To go back to the question at hand, relationships with city council, I don't have relationships with city council. That's part of the fact of becoming a new person running. I don't know you. I don't know Mr. Blair over here, Mayor Barnett, and I just met today. That is a process. New relationships take time to build. However, that also means that I have new ideas, not ones that have been tossed around for 17 years or however long you guys have been in city council individually. New ideas are good. Fresh ideas are good. A new generation of leadership is good, and this is what bringing new blood into our government body in Rochester Hills. That's the benefit that we have here.
I'd like to rebut.
We're going to let Mr. Sahu answer, and then you can rebut.
Thank you.
So, President Diop, I appreciate your question, and I think it's very clear that, of course, I don't have those long-standing relationships because I have not served on council. I'm, probably maybe. If I started right at 18, I'd have like maybe a few years, of experience with these folks. But what I do have is the ability to work with people and to approach problems in good faith and to solve these problems because I think we all love our city, and anyone who's standing here or a member of public office in Rochester Hills loves this community. So if they're willing to work with me, I'm willing to work with them.
Thank you. Mr. Blair, 30 seconds.
I just want to comment on the phrase that Ms. Paviani mentioned, new ideas. Another way to say that is innovation. And that is something that this city does better than anybody else. That's it.
Thank you. Okay, we are going to do possibly one more question. If it goes really fast, we'll do two more, but at least one.
Hello, my name is Iris Euler, and I've lived here since 1975. I'd like to know what each of you think about the possible widening of Adams Road and how it might affect the historical stone wall and the big trees. Could I hear what your opinions are on that, please?
Okay, we are starting with Mr. Barnett.
Thank you, Mrs. Euler, and thank you for your longtime citizenship in Avon Township and Rochester Hills. You know, one thing that candidates might be quick to do, and this might have even been me 20 years ago, is to make promises. I'll never do this. I'll never raise taxes. I'll never do anything. And I think it's always important in a leadership position. One of the most important things I can do is get as many perspectives as I can, gather as much data as I can, and then try to make the best decision possible in a collaborative environment. We talked about relationships in the last answer. Adams Road is a really interesting proposal. I live pretty close to Adams Road, and it's a beautiful road. I think it's the most, you're not supposed to have favorites as mayor, I think it's the most beautiful road in the city. I love Adams Road. But when people look at the data, it's not my road, it's not our city's road, it's a county road. We have to work in a collaborative environment. A big partner there is Oakland University. That's where my mom, who's in the audience, graduated. That's where I graduated. That's where my son started school this week. It's a pretty important place to my family as well. Part of the process is gathering as much information as you can. And what we did is we went out and got a grant to be able to study it. Now, some people get super excited. Why are they studying it? They're going to make it a 5-lane road. No, that's certainly not the intention. But we should be able to get as much data as possible to understand. Here's what I know about Adams Road. It's not a safe road. I'd like to ride my bike. I can't ride my bike from Hamlin Road north to Walton. I can't. It's probably the most dangerous section in our city. I know exiting off of Butler Road is a pretty dangerous gamble. And I know that that intersection at Avon has had some fatalities. So I know that there's opportunities to improve. But I also know that I am passionate about protecting our history. I love what we've done at the museum. We're celebrating our 200th birthday, and you're all invited next Sunday at the museum. Our history is an important part of who we are. So as mayor, I'm going to evaluate every option. I'm not leaning towards the 5-lane road or 4-lane road, but what I want to see is, can I make that road safer for my residents while keeping the historic nature of it? Because I'm passionate about the beauty of that road, the historic elements, but I don't feel comfortable with how safe it is to send myself or my kid on that road out to ride a bike.
Thank you. Ms. Paviani?
Yeah, I believe that we need further analysis about Adams Road. Some of the surveys that have been taken, there were actually construction happening on other local roads, so redirecting traffic to Adams Road. So I want to have a further and deeper analysis of the traffic and issues that come with Adams Road. And then as a city, we can talk about what the options for redirecting traffic could be. It could be more roundabouts, could be slower speed limits, but expanding Adams Road as the last option on the list, because we do need to preserve our natural features, the old trees, and the historic stone wall. That should be a priority. So we need to exhaust every option first before we even start talking about that.
Thank you. Mr. Sahu?
Thank you very much for this question. In regards to Adams Road, I know that it can be a headache, especially when you're trying to make that certain turn off of Avon and Adams going south. Left. It's difficult at times, and I think that there's definitely room for improvement. But we should not be too knee-jerky when it comes to what we can do with this, especially when we look at the resident surveys that have already been filed. Residents seem very clear that they want the historic wall preserved, which I am very sympathetic to as someone who's been a long-time part of the Oakland University community. And they also want to have the mature trees that line that road and make it so beautiful also preserved. But we also know that that something has to change. So whether that is through modifying the intersection, through trying to divert traffic to other roads, it's something that is going to warrant a concrete proposal and a lot of resident feedback. What I don't want to see, though, is a reconstruction of a Rochester Hills version of Hall Road. I don't think anyone wants to see that, and we're just going to need to continue to hold these conversations and figure out exactly what we can do, but not commit to anything that destroys the history and the beauty of our city at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Blair.
Thank you, Iris. That's an excellent question. That section of road has numerous challenges, not just the stone wall of the trees. There's topology there that makes that road dangerous when the roads are icy. There are, I don't know if there's ways to shift track. We've got the best people looking at it. We honestly do. It is in the engineering phase right now. Options are being considered, and the responsible thing for the city to do is consider all options. Widening the road is certainly an option. It was an option for Tinkin. The residents spoke. They said they didn't want Tinkin widened. We listened. We will consider all options for Adams Road and work to find a solution that benefits the residents of the community. So I won't stand here and say we won't widen it. I also won't stand here and say we'll do X, Y, and Z. I want to see what the data says, and we'll use that to make a decision.
Thank you. I think we can squeeze one more question in. This will be the last question.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Judy Heglin. Nice to see all of you tonight. The office of mayor seems to me, I've never been mayor, but seems to be a position of influence. I think being influential is incredibly important, to being mayor of our city. We've seen the success from that. Can each of you give me a story of where you've been very influential in your past?
We're going to generalize that beyond mayor since we have 4 candidates, and we're going to start with Ms. Paviani.
Yeah, I have a history of working at Kensington Church where I like to take on mentorship programs. I've mentored a lot of students throughout the years, trained them in different fields, lighting, audio, video, videography itself. So I like to be influential in personal relationships with the people that are around me. So yeah, that is my background. I am very personable and I love people, and I want to influence in a positive light in that direction.
Thank you. Mr. Sahu?
I think that's a great question and one to really a good one to end off on. I will give you actually a direct example related to city council. When one of my times as being campaign manager, I actually managed the campaign of a city council at-large race back in 2021. And while that campaign was not successful, there would have been no competitive race on the ballot that year had that not been the case. And in terms of influence, we were able to drive a conversation, have a conversation about green spaces and development that would not have been had that election not been competitive. So thank you so much for the question.
Thank you. Mr. Blair?
Well, when I think about my influence on other people, I don't even get past the threshold of my home. I'm the father of twins, and I am trying to provide the best possible influence and upbringing for my kids, which is why I choose to live in Rochester Hills. Outside of my home, I'm a business owner. I work with our small business community to provide IT services. I am a member of the Masonic Lodge, a past master of a Masonic Lodge, actually. I'm a member of the Sons of the American Revolution. I have ancestors that fought in the American Revolutionary War. I'm an expert in our family's lineage. And I'm a member of a number of nonprofits that I mentioned earlier, such as the Rotary Club. It is a privilege to be able to sit up here. And I don't seek to gain from being a visible public figure. I'm giving back to the community to maintain a level of quality that will allow me to fulfill that obligation that I have to my kids so that I can be a positive influence and provide an excellent life for my family.
Thank you. Mr. Barnett?
People generally won't find you influential unless you're genuine, you're authentic, and you're trustworthy. And I think those things hopefully are characters that I certainly ascribe to be. I told you earlier that everything is relational. And in this position, you have to have good relationships with everyone. In the last month, I've been in the White House with the Democratic president. in a personal audience. I've taken a personal cell phone call in the last 2 weeks from our governor talking about an issue. This last weekend, I was at the border with the Deputy Homeland Security talking about border issues. You have to be engaged. Influential, yes, to be the president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, to have the title of America's mayor. You get that not because you have the biggest city or the best airport. You do that because people find you genuine and authentic and a problem solver and a connector. And probably the best example of that recently has been working with Democrats and Republicans over the last year and a half, and an idea that I had a year ago to try to clean up a significant portion of our city in a way that we could never do that unless we had additional funding, and to work with Democrats and Republicans, and when the governor signed it in the last month, to get $75 million for just our city. Just our city was the biggest win in the budget. One other city got more, and they got a nuclear reactor. We didn't want that. Wasn't going for that one. $75 million for just Rochester Hills. You only do that if you are genuine, authentic, and trustworthy. I'm proud of my relationships and hope that I've used them in a way that benefits our community.
Thank you. Now, excuse me while I kill my phone. That's the end of the questions for the evening. I want to thank the candidates and the audience, and we'll now begin our closing statements from the candidates. Each candidate will have 30 seconds to make a closing statement. The order for the closing statements will be in the reverse of the opening statements. So we will begin with Mr. Blair.
Thank you. I will continue to emphasize public safety, parks and green spaces, and fiscal responsibility. I added 12 first responders, new apparatus for our fire department, renovated every fire station and our sheriff's substation. We've acquired new green spaces, high-quality green spaces. We're improving every single park in the city, and we're financially responsible. We've got a balanced budget, 3-year budget, lowered your taxes, and we've won every award conceivable for municipal government. We are on an outstanding path, and I'm going to continue to work my butt off to make sure that Rochester Hills is the preeminent place to live, work, and raise your family.
Thank you. And now the closing statement from Mr. Sahu.
Thank you very much, and I want to thank everyone here for being in attendance. It's nice to see that we have basically packed the room tonight. I know that local government is not always the most appealing or catchy conversation to have, but it is the one that affects us most in our day-to-day lives. And it's why I'm running for office, because I want to make sure that Rochester Hills is not just the premier place, as they say, to live, work, and play, but to be a place that we can continue to do that for decades to come. I want this to be a place that I can be proudly raising my children and to put down my roots, have a family, and maybe even possibly retire here, but we'll see. So I would thank you for your consideration.
Mr. Sahu.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Paviani, your closing statement?
Yes. Returning back to the words of Taylor Swift, even if you're in your wildest dreams, let's go for the green space. Even in your wildest dreams, let's go for more balance and honoring development. Even in your wildest dreams, let's go for community character and features that we love. Let's go for keeping our community everything we want and dream it could be, even if it's just in your wildest dreams. Let's do this together. Let's go for a new generation of leadership, and together we can make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Barnett, your closing statement.
My favorite Taylor Swift song is "I've Got a Blank Space, Baby, I'll Write Your Name." I want to thank the league.
Sorry, no applause. That's a hard and fast rule. You just have to live to learn with it. 30 seconds.
I want to thank the league and all of you for being here. Tonight you've seen the clearest distinction between candidates, I think, in our city's history. Friends, you all know we have a good thing going here. Our city is thriving, and 94% of our residents agree we're on the right track, 94%. So why would we change? You wouldn't take your family to a doctor with no experience or trust a pilot who's never flown. Your home's value and your family's quality of life are both directly impacted by who you choose to lead this community. Think about that. Experience, integrity, and results matter. I'm proud of the fact that our city is Michigan's financial, innovative, and environmental leader. We've invested in what's important, haven't raised taxes along the way. And I've earned the respect and endorsement of nearly every elected leader in our region, both Republican and Democrat. And I'm asking for your support again this fall. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, you may think we're done, but we're not. So hold that applause. Thank you. The League appreciates all the candidates and the members of the audience. This has been an especially lively and a little bit challenging audience, so thank you. We would like to thank the City of Rochester Hills for making this forum possible, and Jason Dale and my League of Women Voters colleagues for so much help. We will be rebroadcasting on Rochester Hills channels WOW, which is number 10, Comcast number 20, AT&T number 99. It will also be available on demand on the city's website, rochesterhills.org, and the League's website, lwvoa.org. And, sorry, I can't turn pages. We hope this candidates forum has been beneficial and will help you cast an informed vote. Please remember to vote on Tuesday, November 7th. Thank you. Thank you. Now you can clap all you want. Thanks.